So a topic near and dear to our heart is raising capital. We provide capital for a living. We work with teams to help build companies. So I thought a simple question for you guys. If you had to go back to the first round that you raised for your company, and Steve, you don't need anybody's money anymore, but what would you do different? So think back to the first round you raised for Chloe and Isabel, and think back to what you presented, how you presented it. What would you do different? And everything is not an acceptable answer.
What's interesting is I would do almost nothing differently, as strange as that sounds. And I think it's because I didn't set out to raise money from venture capital. I mean, I can't remember how much how much you knew about that.
I snuck in there somehow, though.
It really happened by accident. I was going to actually raise the money from people in my industry. So CEOs I had worked with, a factory that I was going to be working with. You know, we actually make jewelry. I don't know if I ever mentioned that yet. And I got randomly introduced to an investor who, next thing I know, just sort of this process snowballed into meeting with multiple investors, and I had a term sheet in front of me. So I don't know if that's the normal process for people, but I was really surprised, to be perfectly honest, that in my mind, a venture capitalist would only invest in a hardcore technology play. That's the way that I envisioned it, because I came from retail and fashion, and I just assumed that this is not going to be something they'd be interested in. So as a result of me having these options, I created this little chart. And I can remember exactly where Chip was on that chart of like, what are all of the things that I need if I'm going to take money from a different world than what I envisioned. Why would I do it? What's the value here? And so I ended up looking at not only these long-term partners, but trying to figure out, okay, what do they bring to the table? Is it that they understand community? Do they understand technology? Do they understand brand? Do they understand e-commerce, finance? Like, there were all these different areas, and if two investors had the same core strength, one of them had to go. So there was so much, I guess, thought that went into picking them that I absolutely love. Especially that first round, that series, or seed, I guess, series A, was my favorite round.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we see is when you're starting a company, if you're going to raise, there's sort of passive angel capital, but if you're going to bring in professional investors who you want to help you build your business, it's you're really entering a long-term partnership, and you should think about not just dollars and cents terms, but do we get along? Do we see the world in similar ways? Because it actually, I've seen many a failed company, and a lot of times it boils down to the people don't play nicely together in the playground.
I was going to say,
yeah.
I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to double down on that.
No, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, look, there as a founder, there are always terms you think I should have renegotiated, like I should have, like liquidation preference should sunset at some point, other than IPO. Like, these are certain things like that you're not taught to negotiate differently. But I don't think those matter as much as what Chip was talking about, which is, and they don't money in me now, so I can say this honestly, there are very few VCs that are entrepreneurial VCs. First round, Tribeca, these are the ones that make the difference in your business. Professional investors are fine, and they're great if they're not on your board, if they're not meeting with you every day. If you have someone who's entrepreneurial like Chip and Brian, what it does for your company and what it does for you and your own sanity, you cannot underestimate how much value that has. There are great name VCs that are literally professional managers who come in and look at you as a portfolio, and how they treat you will depend on the rest of their portfolio. And you're sitting there every day, and this was something that one of our investors told me a long time ago, and I think it's right, which is most entrepreneurs, when they think they found their venture partner, they think it's a meeting of the minds. When for most venture capitalists, it's a marriage of convenience. And so you've got this disconnect. So if you don't have an entrepreneur sitting on your board who's rooting for you, and as an investor, I don't think whatever term you negotiated doesn't really matter. You just suffer. And you already have enough suffering as an entrepreneur. To add more on it, it's like the cherry on top of it. Like, just after you've gone through like 3 months of hell, to come into a board meeting where someone's just looking to knock you down, it's just not really what you need. So it's the little thing. Forget valuation. Forget every other term. I would take lower valuation. I would take worse terms to have someone like a Chip or Brian on my board any day. That's not the honor is not getting the highest valuation. It's winning. So.
Yeah. And so I was going to share, when I was raising money, Kevin Ryan, who was the CEO at DoubleClick, I asked him for advice, and he said, worry about 3 things in this order. So number 1 is culture fit. When the chips are down, and they're going to be down, we've had 2 or 3 really dark periods in the last 7 years, and our investors were there in spades and backed us up, and that was critical. So first, are they people with good character, good business judgment, who aren't going to kind of have a quick trigger finger and make irrational decisions? 2 is structure. That do not take no participating preferred, sorry if that's no participating preferred, never more than 1x preference, and always take a lower valuation than take a structured investment, because more often than not it comes back to bite you. And then number 3 was, once you've satisfied those 2, then pick the highest valuation. And we did that, and it's worked really well. And I've got a bunch of friends who've started companies, and they didn't listen to rule 1 or 2, and they got people who thought they were the CEO, and they're in board meetings kind of micromanaging, going through the sales funnel. They had people, when times got tough, pulled up the red carpet and bad things happened, or they had structure that really minimized outcomes for them as founders and common shareholders. And so I think it was great advice. Culture fit, no structure, then valuation.
Yeah, actually hearing them make those comments, get a really, really good lawyer. So, like, I have an amazing lawyer that, again, was just sort of introduced to me, but I had no idea about anything. I now know what they're saying, but in that first round, I didn't know any of this. And I have a great term sheet as a result of having a really awesome lawyer, and they're expensive. So don't be afraid of spending money on a good lawyer.